Well, when hurricanes knock out power, telephone lines, cell towers, sometimes going old school is the only way to get out the message. And sometimes those messages come straight from the National Hurricane Center, where they have their own radio team. And Julio joins us right now. Julio, thanks for being with us. You know, this is a unique setup, a unique relationship that amateur radio operators have with the Hurricane Center. Tell us how it works.
Well, thank you, Mike. Basically, what we do here is we talk to other ham radio operators that are being affected by hurricanes, sometimes right in the middle of a hurricane. We use radios here, different types of radios. Some of them are international radios, like we used to call them shortwave at one time. We bounce our signal off the ionosphere, and it lands thousands of miles away, just using enough power to power a light bulb, believe it or not. And then we gather eyewitness reports from these ham operators in the islands or on the Gulf Coast, anywhere, and then we bring them in and give them to the hurricane forecasters. And sometimes that fills in those gaps that they can't get through satellites and air reconnaissance.
So Julio, hey, it's Dr. Rick Knabb. It's good to see you. Now, Julio and I go way back, okay? But Julio is a good friend, and I want everybody to understand where you're sitting, okay? You are right next to the Hurricane Reconnaissance Office, and directly across the hallway from where the hurricane specialist sits. So I've had the experience of grabbing from you a piece of paper that has a ham radio report of an observation from an area that's been affected by the hurricane. We couldn't have got that observation any other way. Talk about how you work with the specialist down there.
Yeah, basically that's what we do. Just one example, for which you know very well, in 2005 Hurricane Adrian, we had a sailboat out near El Salvador. And that sailboat was sending us weather reports from their weather station on the sailboat there. And there was no other surface data coming in at that time. And we would basically write all that down, and sometimes we print it out if they're digital, because we do have digital radios as well. And we bring them into the Hurricane Center with all the forecasters there, and all the hurricane specialists look at it, and then they can tell, you know, where that wind, what direction the wind was coming in, the barometric pressure, and that fills in those gaps.
Yeah, and Julio was telling the story that that was from when I had to do the report on that system, and the only way I was able to actually accurately document what happened with that system in Central America was because of data through the ham radio operators that relayed it. Now, talk about all the volunteers and the effort that you go through to train everybody and recruit those volunteers.
Yeah, we have a staff of about 30 volunteers. They're all top-grade ham radio operators, and we do bring them in and interview them. They have to have, you know, background checks and personal references. And then we bring them in, and we take about 2 or 3 days of a training session, which is not radio-related because they know their radios before they come in. But basically how to gather the data, how to bring it down, how to filter some of the data, and then how to interact with the hurricane specialist.
Julio, are there gaps that you'd like to fill, places where you maybe would like to have a little bit better coverage than you have now?
Oh, absolutely. We've had some missing pieces, especially in the islands. We have good relationship with the ham radio operators in the island and some of their clubs. But what happens very often, like what happens here in Miami, people batten down the hatches, bring down their towers, and then we don't hear from them. So we ask the ham operators in the hurricane-affected areas to have backup power, whether it's battery or a generator, and to use wire antennas, because when we use those aluminum beam antennas that are excellent when we're doing regular operating, the wire antennas are very flexible, they flex in the wind, and they don't break. And we've had, in fact, here at the Hurricane Center, we have 7 ham radio antennas up there. And the 2 main ones we use, we call dipole antennas. They're actually wires. They're about 140 feet long from our 100-foot tower down to the building. And those withstood hurricanes like Wilma a few years ago, where we had winds here. I think they were up to about 110 miles per hour, gusting up there. And they lasted easily. The wind goes right through it. They flex. And with those wires, we can talk all over the world.
Yeah, so Julio, I was on the operations floor during Hurricane Wilma, and I remember that event very well, and I've told the story many times. Yes, the Hurricane Center's facility is a steel reinforced concrete bunker, but communications are vulnerable. But how is it that the ham radio signal is going to be the one that might be the last one operating, even at the Hurricane Center if they're directly hit.
Yeah, that happened during Hurricane Fabian in Bermuda many years ago. They had no communications left over, conventional communications. And I remember a very famous reporter came in here, he heard us talking to Bermuda, and he asked us how we're doing that. And I explained to him how we're bouncing the signals through the ionosphere. There's no wires connected between us and them. We send the signal up, like a mirror, it bounces it back down to Earth. And he says, but this is 100-year-old technology. You guys are dinosaurs. I said, okay, fine. I said, well, you're in Bermuda in a hurricane. Go outside with your satellite phone and call me. And of course, then he realized, well, I really can't do that. I said, well, these hams can.
Great story.
That is awesome. Hey, you might be a dinosaur, but you're not extinct. Hey, Julio, thank you so much. Great to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Maybe a lot of people just don't know. Listen, this is, yes, the ionosphere helping us communicate.
Such dedicated volunteers.